So we're beginning a discussion of the current transits that's coming up, and all of these folks here work in the booth at the Georgia Renaissance Festival. So we kind of want to know what we're coming into and starting with. Would you like, I'd like to publish this after we're done sometime, YouTube and whatever. So do you guys want to introduce yourselves or say a little bit about yourselves? Kristen?
Sure.
You can.
I'm Kristen. I my Instagram handle, A Witch in the Woods, and I've been reading astrology for a few years on my own, and just recently joined Alan and everyone at the booth. So it's been a fun journey.
What's some of your astrology makeup?
My astrology makeup, well, my big three would be Sag Sun, with Moon in Scorpio, and my ascendant is Aquarius. So
Right.
all
So
light and
all
fluffy
that,
on the outside, and then deep and dark on
yeah,
the inside.
all that black clothing and all that stuff.
I know I'm the black cat of the group. Well, Tara too, I would say.
Yeah, we
Uh,
have two.
we have a few black cats here.
Right. Tara?
My name is Tara DiPatrillo. I go by the name The Nomadic Artistic Mystic. On Instagram, you can find me at the Nam, Nan, Tarot. And I've been doing tarot since I was around 15 years old, on and off, just floating in and out of it. And yeah, it's just something that always brought me back and really enjoy it. And I've been at the Renaissance Festival with Alan. I guess this will be my third season joining you over there, doing that and the Fall Fest. And
Yeah.
my sign, I have a Scorpio stellium, so definitely a lot of that black cat. Gee. Uh, my sun Scorpio, my rising is Scorpio, and the moon is in Gemini.
Right. Yeah. And just to qualify, it's an astrology booth, but we use tarot readers occasionally, and great respect for tarot. Just it's an astrology booth, but we're going to try to cross-reference some of the cards today that would look like the astrology transits that we're going to be looking at. Ginger.
Hi, I'm Ginger Sadlier. I think I've been working with you, Alan, for 4 years now. Um, my big three is I'm a Virgo rising, a Cancer sun, and a Libra moon. And my website is Gemini in the 10th. You can also find me at ginger at geminiinthetenth.com.
Right. So you are our connection with Trad Astrology and Chris Brennan, for which we have many discussions that sometimes don't agree.
Yeah, I started off studying modern astrology. I actually followed Steve Judd for a long time. I really liked his very concise descriptions. It was super helpful for learning. But eventually I did find traditional astrology, and yeah, I'm on the producing tier of his astrology podcast.
All right. And both you and Tara, a little hard to hear you. So if we're recording, I know you don't want to shout in a coffee shop, but whatever. Megna?
Hi, everyone. My name is Meghna Bhagat. I am an evolutionary experiential choice centered astrologer, and I have dabbled in both the traditional, a little bit of Hellenistic, even Jyotish, which I'm learning now, and but my heart is evolutionary astrology. The question that I always ask a chart is, why do I have the chart that I do? And that's the question evolutionary astrology answers. And it's the one that most fascinates me about my own life And so I bring that into my readings and into my work. I have put my YouTube channel here. That's a lot of what I talk about is in there. And then my website is just my name, so you can find me there. I don't share my personal astrology out loud on YouTube videos, but maybe you can guess some of the things based on what I'm saying through the process. Oh, and
Right.
I'm the newest addition to the Renaissance festivals. I am, bow down to all of you for the level of depth and precision you bring day after day to those readings. It's a lot of work to sit for 7, 8 hours and read chart after chart after chart. And so I've done it one time, twice actually, once as an observer mostly, and then the second time on my own. And I've really have a huge respect for the people who can pull things from a chart, especially people, just so you know, these people are not using their computer programs to do these charts. You are going through the ephemeris, pulling it out and doing the charts real life in person with these beautiful experiential boards that you can touch and feel. And anyway, I just really love what you guys do and how much you can give somebody in those 15 minutes that they come and sit with you.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Um, um, and I'm Alan, and I've owned or owned this booth, but done astrology in Ren Fest for 25 years now. Started in 2000 in Michigan, and have went on the road for a while. Did a lot of fairs, but settled into the Carolina and the Georgia Festival right now. And I'm a sixth house Saturn Mercury, no, I'm sorry, Sun Mercury Saturn Neptune conjunction in Libra. So the 1952 Saturn Neptune conjunction. Um, a bit of a taskmaster. Keep us moving right along, so to speak. But also, up until I started writing books, actually, most of what I ever wrote in my life was four sentence um, summation of how a patient's night went at the psychiatric hospital that I worked at. So the Saturn Mercury has to glean it down into four sentences to chart on a person. And so that's what I'm good at is gleaning things down to an essence and getting them done in 15 minutes, which is what these readings are all about. And hopefully, if a person needs more, they come to you later for a full reading, of course. Um, but being a Saturn Mercury, I tend to give them exactly what they need for the next 2 years. And if I see them next year, I'm asking them, why are you here? Well, I told you what you're going to do for 2 years. Why are you back? And they're like, well, we like the reading. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. Anyway, so we got a bunch of transits to look at, right? And at what I pulled up, and I got to share screen again, I guess, was this upcoming stellium in Aries. And did anybody have a comment on that? Where's my share screen? There it is. No. I don't use Zoom enough to be totally comfortable with it. Anybody know where the share screen is?
Yeah, if you go to the bottom or wherever that little bar is, there'll be something that says share. And if it's
Oh, there
not
it is.
there, yeah,
I
okay.
got it. Yeah. Yeah, so this is the chart for the 15th that's coming up. And there was something that was happening nationally on that day, but I can't remember what it is now because there's so much going on. Um,
IRS. Tax day.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Well, that's true. Yeah, it is IRS day. Um, well, Saturn is opposite my sun at that day. So
Oh,
I'm actually purposely losing weight and have changed my diet a lot and am trying to survive my Saturn opposition, which will be next April, the age 73, 74 Saturn opposition. So I don't know. I don't know if it'll do anything this year or not with the Saturn opposition. Just really watching, exercising, watching my weight, and actually playing or practicing piano at least 2 hours a day. So it's a new learning curve for me. So that would be a Saturn opposition in a way that takes you outside of yourself. Um, I think I could rationalize that as an external um, as sort of as an external study, segueing on an internal system of being a musician anyway, which is the Saturn Neptune in my chart. It's the sun, that's Eris, which is an asteroid, right? Still, I can't keep up. Saturn, Mars, Neptune, Mercury, Moon, and Chiron, all in Aries. So it would be connected with doing things a new way. And we're going to probably go ahead with Megna's thoughts on the Saturn Neptune, since you've been doing a lot of writing on that. Um, but in short, first we were going to look at this Mars Saturn with Ginger. But in short, what we have is Saturn in its fall in is it fall or detriment? I've forgotten the I think it's fall in Aries. In other words, imposing discipline on a sign that just likes to do and not have to pay any attention to rules or constraints. Um, and so for tarot, I was thinking more of the Emperor card, and then who who would what card would people think of in terms of constraint besides the Chariot, perhaps? What would be
Or
constraint over the Emperor, in other words?
it could be I mean, quite a few different things. We can either go with the cards as they're placed to whichever sign or whichever planet. It can also be to an element. But if I wanted to take it out of the context of their correspondence or association, constraints sometimes could be, like the Eight of Swords feels held back. She has the blindfold on and the swords are laid all around her.
Okay. Ginger, do you want to go off on the Saturn Mars?
Saturn, Mars.
Aries?
Sure. So I have Saturn and Mars conjunct natally, and it's in Virgo, so it's a little bit different. But I think the biggest word that I can use to describe it is frustrating. It's very frustrating. There's a really good analogy that is having your foot on the gas and your foot on the brake at the same time. So you're burning yourself out without actually making any progress, which is what makes it so frustrating. So a good example how I experience this transit is I'm super busy all the time. and I'm always running late. Everywhere I go, I run late. And yet I don't do things swiftly. I am a slow, like as I work on a project, it's slow and meticulous. Now, granted, that's probably the Virgo part of it, but it's also extremely determined. So I can do things slowly or for a long time without needing regeneration. So the way that I see this upcoming Mars Saturn conjunction is that it will be frustrating. The one good thing about Mars is that it's in its domicile. So the way that I see this playing out for people is if you already have a project that you're working on and things are moving along, then the break is going to be hit, and that either the project will be stalled or delayed in some way. And the frustrating part of that could be that the action, the desire to just be done with the project, or if there is some sort of turn of events that you just want to rush through them and quickly sign the paperwork when in fact you haven't actually read it, and that you have to do all these steps before you complete it. So you might have to make a trip somewhere or do something extraordinary in order to fulfill the process. And that is innately frustrating. So I know a lot of people, well, in traditional astrology, Saturn Mars conjunction is considered like the most negative. But as I experience it, I actually really appreciate it, because if you're rushing through something, to have another outside force tell you to
Froze.
stop.
You froze for a minute.
Oh, I apologize. When you're
Just that
rushing,
sentence.
yeah, when you're rushing through something, having an outside force making you stop is sometimes the healthiest thing. And if you're moving too slow and having an outside force cracking the whip is sometimes a thing that you need as well. So I don't see it as a super negative um, uh, transit, but it is a time when you really need to pay attention.
I would comment before we go further in depth. I would comment that over the years, I've always been uh, not confused, but sort of in a duplicity of is this person with a Saturn Mars conjunction debilitated, to use trad terms, or are they really hardworking and really diligent, so to speak, at producing what they need to do, and then it sort of depends on the time in their life, on the house system, on the sign that it's in. Um, I had one example way back in about 2007. I had a Saturn Mars person in Sagittarius who was well aware of her flaws, and yet after yeah go away after after getting busted by the cops, went to a party at the Silverdome, which is the football stadium in Detroit, got drunk again, got picked up yet again. And this was with Pluto hitting her Mars Saturn in Sagittarius back in 2007 when Pluto was in Sagittarius. So this was, yeah, let me just try to self-defeat one more time, to see if it really works. She didn't know astrology, but you can see where it depends on the transit that's hitting it too. Um,
We can
or
take a
nothing.
beating, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, but you can also set yourself up for a beating.
Yeah,
Um,
and I would say that it's both, that we can, it's not either or. right? We can be really hardworking and be our own worst enemies. Because if you're working, now again, I have this in Virgo. So sometimes a project doesn't have to be perfect. I don't think Virgos are perfectionist. I think they're particular. So I can get lost in something being extremely particular and not be able to just be done with it. So learning how to let go is a big lesson here. And also, I think that Saturn Mars is a late bloomer. This is somebody that comes into their own later.
Well, I would comment that I might have seen that Saturn and Mars working in your chart with that client that we talked about a couple of years ago, who kept the last client of the day that kept at you saying, "Well, that won't work, that won't work, that won't work," and you kept trying to help that person. You wouldn't quit trying to help him, and I'm like, time out. He's
Yeah,
using you. he
yeah.
he
Well, I
doesn't
have a
want
Libra moon,
right.
so
He doesn't
there's
want
that.
help. He wants affirmation that it can't be solved.
Right.
Say goodbye, thank you very much, see you next year, or whatever. Yeah, interesting. So, two things to segue here. So the thing is that this is in Aries, so Aries is not going to be as assiduous as a Virgo Saturn Mars. They're going to want to cut right through it. And then we have the Neptune. They're saying, but I don't have a clue what to do anyways. So maybe Megna can start with us and give us some feedback on just what that Saturn Neptune would do. And I'm going to let my cat out here for just a second. That's what you wanted.
I wanted to add to the Saturn, Mars, Saturn, Aries as well. Um, to me, it feels very like, especially with Saturn kind of being ruled in a way by, or not being ruled, but having Mars influence it. Onyx, sorry, my cat. Um, I thought it was interesting that it kind of has like an internal, external, like tearing apart feeling. Um, with the Saturn, Mars in Aries of just wanting to go but not going, like Ginger was saying, like that push on the gas and the brake at the same time.
Yeah. I want to follow up on that too, Kristen. I think, by the way, loved how your cat was so sweet. Um, but
He can be until he's destructive.
it's, I think that's so apt, as an experiential astrologer and, beginning Jyotish, it's like, the things that happen in the moment of what we're talking about have a relevance. So the cats coming in, both of them at the moment of this Mars Saturn thing feels interesting and relevant to me. Make of it what you will. But this
Totally.
idea, I've heard the brake and accelerator multiple times from lots of different people. And I feel like what it's really inviting is learn how to drive, because you need the brake and you need the accelerator. And it's like the people who are born with this, I imagine the universe is saying, look, man, I'm giving you some firepower here, but I'm also giving you a brake. And so you can't have a car that's great without the accelerator and the brake, and you've got them really close. So how are you going to use this vehicle that we're giving you? So how do you use this Mars Saturn for yourself? And this, as you're saying, Alan, I've been spending a lot of time with Saturn and Neptune. Mars is going to come to Neptune first, and it's going to say, hey, how you doing? First it's going to actually hit the point where they met, which is 0 Aries, which is freaking enormous. And, we're seeing in the world what's happening with all this firepower, but it's going to come there and be like, activate that same point where they met and started their brand new 36-year cycle, a place where they haven't met for thousands of years, maybe ever. And that's a world point. So that's going to ignite something. I'm not quite sure what yet. Then it's going to come to Neptune and say, I'm in this like vast realm of Neptune where everything is possible. And then it's going to heat up that thing. But Mars and Aries can bring a little lightness to the vastness of Neptune, which can feel really overwhelming and feel like you're drowning in it. But Mars is going to come in and be like, what are we going to take action on? Which of these dreams? Because I think of Neptune as our dreams, our visions, our hopes, our longings. And so it's saying, which of these do we want to add firepower to? Which one do we want to put the accelerator on top of? And then as it comes to Saturn, maybe it brings the message, hey, this is the dream we want to act on. How do we actually make it real? Because Saturn is not making the brakes have eye makeup. Saturn's not saying let's put the brakes on things just because it's like, hey, I'm the party pooper in the pack, trying to stop everybody. But it's saying like, Saturn doesn't want to take leaps. It's like, I want to test every rung of the ladder before you climb it. I'm not the person who's going to be like Jupiter leaping. I'm going to be the guy who makes sure that your bridge is really solid, that you actually have a bridge that's not just a vision in your mind. The very first time Neptune was discovered was actually Galileo, when Neptune was conjunct Jupiter and Galileo was studying Jupiter's moons back in the 1600s. And because Neptune was stationing retrograde at that exact moment, Galileo thought it was a star and didn't pay attention to it. And it took 200 years, 1840s, before they discovered Neptune. And it was discovered when Saturn and Neptune were conjunct. So to me, Saturn and Neptune have a really deep relationship. And Neptune's elusive if you're not bringing the reality of Saturn to it. So anyway, I feel like the three pieces.
You're preaching to the choir here. I'm a Saturn Neptune conjunction. So.
Right. I mean,
yeah.
you know how, so my entire thing this time has been how do you bring the Neptunian vision into form? And with Aries, it feels like zero Aries, especially, it feels like the beginning of the zodiac. And I always think of Aries as the first spark, the ignition point, like you light them. I mean, ignition point, we're talking about cars again, right? It's like you ignite something, you put your key into the ignition and you turn it. It's like the vroom, like you begin. And so we've begun something and it's new and it's exciting, but we don't quite know what the heck it is yet, because that's what a birth is like. We don't know what we're giving birth to, what we're igniting yet. This fire has lit. Mars is coming to be like, hey, remember? And then it's asking, what do we want to bring into form? And the way I've been kind of talking about it on my YouTube channel is that I think of this moment as, what are my actual dreams? Aries is all about me. And it's like, I exist, like to come from the ocean of Pisces and to be like, I'm this spark that is now separate. It's asking, what are my dreams? Not the ones I've picked up from the world around me, not the ones that I have inherited, not the ones that people have told me that I should have, but what are mine? And then kind of dreaming without bounds for a minute. And then bringing those dreams to Saturn and finding out which ones actually enliven you enough to build them, to build the edifice that's actually going to be something that lasts over this 36-year cycle, that says, I want this bad enough that I'm not just willing to dream it, I'm willing to perspire for it. I'm willing to put time, energy, resources, whatever's left of my life. Oh, we lost Kristen. Interesting. And what's I've also been talking about this on my thing, my YouTube channel, is the myth that I associate with this. The very first time I believe that Saturn and Neptune connected was in theogony, in the Greek myth of when Saturn severs, and warning to our gentle listeners, this is a violent act that Saturn does. He severs Uranus's genitals because Uranus is oppressing Gaia from not birthing her children. He's saying these children are not perfect enough. Talk about Virgo, right? These are not perfect enough. I will not let them get born. And then Saturn severs his genitals, drops him into the sea, which I imagine is Neptune. And from that, Aphrodite is born. So the birth of love comes from an act of removing repression. Welcome back, Kristen. I was just talking about the myth and theogony of Saturn severing Uranus's genitals, dropping him into the sea, which I imagine is Neptune, and then Aphrodite being born from it. So it feels like a birth of when we take our wounded parts and surrender them to Neptune, something new can be born and possibly something incredibly beautiful. But it's not up to us what gets born once we surrender the severed parts to Neptune. And we lost you just as I was going into the myth, which I feel like is like we lost something, and then here she comes back, with her Aphrodite-ness.
I mean, a fun fact, my ascendant is conjunct is Venus in my natal chart. So
Conjunct what? I'm sorry.
Venus is conjunct my ascendant in my natal chart.
Oh, right. Yeah.
See, I mean, can you make this stuff up? I don't think so. Like it's just, I love how she drops out right at the myth and then she comes back, rises from the ocean. And I'd love to hear what you guys think and how you're using it.
I wanted to comment.
To add to that. Are you going now?
Yeah, I wanted to comment that we just saw something like this out of Persia or Iran. Their response to Trump saying that he was going to bomb them back into the Stone Age, their response was just like, we're 6,000 years old. You're only 200 and some years old. You're not going to bomb us back to anything. You're going to bomb us back to, yeah, go ahead and bomb us back to that when we were in control of the entire known world, which is sort of like Neptune versus Mars. It's like, yeah, try it. Come on. We have a history long or far beyond what your little Mars wants to do. So that's my political or historical comment on it. Go ahead, Tara.
No, I think it was really interesting because one of the things I wanted to bring up was Saturn being represented in the world card. And with the world card, it's, when you look at the tree of life or Kabbalistic tarot, it's Yesod into Malkuth, and Malkuth is the material world. So it's like giving birth. It's the completion of a journey. So it's like, it's like the beginning and the end, once it ends, it comes back. But then it's also interesting with Kristen, with you kind of something else I was going to bring up with you kind of being logged off and coming back. I also wanted to bring up the fire being represented in the judgment card. And that's all about making a comeback. That's about returning to life. That's the resurrection. And so it's just interesting what you were just saying, because it totally ties in, and I think just kind of validates a lot of those points. And just with, Neptune wasn't around, a while ago. It was something that came in later. So as far as the correspondences with the cards, it was, there's a lot of different talk of like, okay, what card is really, being represented there? But one of them is the Hanged Man. And like we were talking about earlier, the Hanged Man is having this different perspective, right? He's upside down, he's hanging there, he's very uncomfortable. I mean, that does not look like a position any one of us would want to be in, but there's, sometimes something happens, but it's being able to look at it from a different way where, okay, this thing is happening. I don't really like this, but maybe there's something else, or it's guiding me or bringing me somewhere else. So I think it's a good time to just, if anyone's going through anything that feels, heavy or uncomfortable, with the Hanged Man is taking that time to pause. Sometimes we're given a certain amount of time and we're very, like we just want something to happen. We want it now. It's just like, why am I having to wait, and what's going on? And I don't like this. And it's just, it can be very frustrating, but, with everything going on, it's sort of like, things are going to end. Things are going to, begin. And with the Aries being the emperor is all about putting things into action. But having that, Neptune and that dreamy, it's sort of like, okay, emperor, you might want to go ahead and like do and put into action. But it's like, maybe, just kind of sit and wait and like dream about it. imagine it, like take time creating it instead of rushing into something, but it is taking the action too. Yeah, I think it's going to be a really good time for a lot of new
Would
beginnings for
would
people to.
would you also use what the moon or the high priestess as Neptune?
I think that yes, you can definitely relate, the moon into that and having that like mysterious air of everything. It's also, where secrets and things are being revealed, right? With the high priestess, it's having that veil of going between sides, which I kind of like coming from that angle with the high priestess and then going back to Aries as the emperor. The emperor is also, Kabbalistically, that would be a sign of the window, right? And a window is kind of like that veil. And when we have that window, what does a window do? We can either open it or close it, right? And I like thinking of the hanged man being next to the window because it's almost like he has an opportunity. Most of the time, we like open a window from the bottom. Some of them open from the top, but it's sort of like, he has this like, advantage of being able to just sort of like, oh, okay, here, I can kind of get out and sort of like escape here. But it's, are we protecting ourselves? Are we letting air in? Are we closing? Are we opening? So sort of this duality. And, with being the emperor's, this father figure, right? And you think of, having some kind of control. But we can control, what we think of, for ourselves, not necessarily the life experience, what's going on the other side of the window. Like we don't know. But we have some, control of how we're going to react or how we're going to respond to that.
Let me comment in terms of working in the booth. Statistically, number one, Aries is not likely to come in for a reading. They know who they are. They don't want to be told, by somebody else who they are, what they're going through. And secondly, if they do come in, and they may well come in for a reading, you then have to work through the ego defenses that they have, which is, first of all, they're going to control the reading. And you're like, no, actually, you came in for us to help you, not you to tell me what's going on. But I'm going to let them go through that for a while to make sure that they know they're in control. Except then I'm going to turn it around and go, but actually, this is what I'm going to give you, you know. Um, and then I think it becomes um, a task to help them uncover that themselves and to say, what would it be like for you to sit and listen when actually you want to act, and help them work through that themselves rather than telling them, giving them information. But I also wanted to share a little short, excuse me, Megna, mundane reading. I happened to see an old client at the farmer's market, and she's a Pisces with Moon and Aries. I had read her, probably 10 years ago. And she moved out of the neighborhood, and she was saying, well, she was a little bit leery of this upcoming Saturn Neptune in Aries. And I'm remembering her chart, or she told me, she reminded me of her chart, and I said, well, that's fairly simple. I can get theoretical, but I can also get mundane and simple. How old are your children? 10 and 13. Okay, Saturn's going to hit your moon, right? It's time for tough love. In other words, you've been this Pisces, you've had 13 years of Neptune going through your sun sign. You've been laid back, you've had children, they're good children, they learn, they go to school, they're about to become adolescents. And Saturn's about to hit your Mars. It's time for mom to turn into tough love, you know. So that I'm just sharing, you know, I mean, and maybe it's because I think her sun is conjunct my moon or something. She's like, man, you just nailed it. You know, that's exactly what I'm fearing or thinking or whatever. I don't know that I'm that good with everybody, but she's given me that feedback, you know, over the years. So, but it's there's a mundane aspect that sometimes we have to get to in a reading, asking that client, well, how do you think this is going to affect you? In other words, what's going to go on in your life that Saturn's going to suddenly affect, or Neptune's going to erode, or Mars is going to trigger, you know, or all of the above at the same time. Ginger, what are your thoughts?
Um, so I have someone very dear in my life that it is a Mars Neptune conjunction, and
Mhm.
it is conjunct their sun in a fire sign. And this person is repeatedly what's the word? Misunderstood. Um not People don't see this person for who they really are. They always mistake this person as being much younger than what they are, much less experienced than what they are. They are extremely imaginative and very hardworking. Mars in any fire sign is go, 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 go. So kind of like you, Alan, where you have the Saturn, uh, Neptune, and the ability to build structures of imagination. It's similar to that. They also have Saturn trining all of this stuff, but the Mars Neptune, I think of it as being just not seen, or your work not being seen for what you're actually doing. So I think that something to just be aware of is that if you do have a dream that you're trying to begin, ignite, or continue or move to the next level, that it's okay if others don't acknowledge it at this time. It doesn't mean that you're wrong or you're on the wrong track or that it's not worth doing. It just might not be the time for it to be revealed. So, and also, the Neptune can add an element of wonder to your doings. So you might think to yourself, oh, this is another thing that my loved one does a lot. They don't ever think something's going to take that much time.
Sure.
This will just be a few hours. This will only take me 2 days. And a week later, an entire structure has been built and it's perfect and immaculate and done at every like nothing has been uh uh wasted or done in a short manner. It's all been done with a lot of uh expertise, but it took 3 times longer than they imagined. So yeah.
Intuition. I thought of a scenario that would, well, actually, there's dozens of scenarios, and especially with the house position. But one of the scenarios that we might run into and think about is that we have a lot of wannabe actors and actresses come to us nowadays because of Tyler Perry's work in Atlanta, the East Lake, and all of the acting that's going on here. So, what would you say to a client if the Saturn Neptune Mars is hitting and they're let's 25 whatever, um, and they want to be an actress or a star, and it's hitting their 10th house, what would you tell them? How
So
would you?
if it's in my tradition, if it's hitting their 10th house, then they are a Cancer rising. So I would
Or
look to the
Leo
moon,
and ninth, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
but not in
I know your
traditional
whole house.
astrology.
I mean, but I'm thinking of the actors and actresses. By now,
Right.
they're progressed. Whatever. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the Cancer risings, I would look to the moon to get answers for that, number one. And also, yeah, I would have to say I would have to navigate it with other parts of their chart. I don't know if I am as good with the theoretical.
And just to input what I would do as as the Saturnian that I am, I'm like, yeah, you and 3,000 other people want to be a superstar, and Saturn's in your midheaven. Have you done the hard work? Well, you can't if you're
Mhm.
25. You haven't had time to do that yet. You maybe, but not possibly. Neptune, are you dreaming too high? Are you being delusional about your acting abilities or your chances? And I wouldn't be mean about that. It's like anything else. How many young African American um, basketball hoop players in the city are going to make it to the NBA? Well, one out of 100,000, even
Mhm.
though 990,000 might be almost as good, basketball players. There's just the reality factor going on. And it's not that I want to be mean, it's that we see these people lately coming to us wanting us to affirm that their hopes and dreams are going to happen. And so I say that somewhat tenderly is like, God, you're coming to me, and what you want me to say is that everything you hope for is going to happen.
If I
Go
look
ahead.
at, I was just going to say the 10th house is every time Saturn touches a place in the chart, I think of it as a maturation pulse. And what are you growing up into, and what have you outgrown? And so I would ask them, what? And then Neptune, I have two friends who've had Neptune, actually, multiple people who've had Neptune transit their midheaven and then enter their 10th house. And it's like when Neptune is coming to your 10th house, it's asking about those people have had really deep spiritual things happen for them. Poetry has started like blossoming. Like one person, she just had like massive amounts of poetry just pour through her for like 2 years. She doesn't write it anymore, but when Neptune was in her 10th house, she was writing a ton of poetry. Somebody else found Zen at that time. Somebody else. Neptune is movies also. So I don't want to say that it's not possible, but you're not going to do it without the Saturn effort. And it's going to feel like it may not come as quickly as you want it to come, or it may not be quite what you think it's going to be. Saturn's the reality check also. And it's going to ask, are these your dreams? Or are you just following these dreams because that's the cool thing that looks cool right now? But Neptune is film. So, that's possible. If it's coming to your 10th house, maybe it is possible, but you're going to have to put in the effort. And if Mars is coming there, maybe there's an opportunity or something that shows up, and maybe it's too good to be true, or maybe it's not. One of the other things I talk about with Neptune is disillusionment. You're going to get a reality check, and it's going to remind you, see, here's our furry friends here.
Yeah, reality check.
Well, it's like, it's this. Yeah, I just feel like there's something about it's going to ask you to check in about, are these dreams ones I'm willing to work for? Because becoming an actor isn't like becoming Brad Pitt the next day. It's like you have a ton of ways that you can be an actor. And is it the craft that you really love, or is it the side effects of being an actor that you actually love? And so those are the kind of questions that I think the person with a 10th house Saturn Neptune moment is being asked. And it's not a short moment, right? Neptune's going to take forever to get through, not forever, 15 years or so, to get through 13 to 15 years to get through Aries. But Saturn's going to do it over the next 2 years. And then when it goes into Taurus, it's going to ask, well, do I feel stable enough? You know? And so I feel like that moment right now is, what have I outgrown? And are these truly my dreams? And if they are my dreams, am I willing to put in the work for it?
Mhm. None of which makes it an easy reading for us to give to people is, I think what I wanted to point out is that um, we're going to be, I don't know, we're going to be parsing these ideas through the next possibly 500 people that we see in this festival, and some of which will be affected by that. Um, we should go on to some other things, and then come back, to that, because that Neptune, that's going to be really well. To finish though, uh, then there's one other factor, and that's that some of these people with the Saturn in Aries are going to be on their Saturn return. So then, what's our message for them there? And I'll lead off with the thought that at the time that Mars and Saturn are telling you to grow up, make decisions, finally settle down with your career or marriage or whatever it is that the Saturn return urges you to do, Neptune's going to confuse all that and make you question some of that. Or does that sound valid? Or how would you deal with that? Go ahead. Anybody?
I have an idea. I think it's going to be challenging for us because traditionally Saturn returns, at least your first one comes between 28 and 30, wrapping up by 33. And the Saturn and Aries people are coming later. They're later. So I think that this is going to be an opportunity for us to learn how to adjust to the next generation and how that might be different from our own experiences and past readings that we have done. So I think that's a really important piece of information that we should have as astrologers and tarot readers, to make sure that we're going to have to be a little more flexible.
Interesting. That opens up a whole lot of transit thoughts, but I'm not sure. Um, I let me back up a second. So a Saturn return, theoretically, um, no matter what generation you are from, stretching back all through history, is still time to grow up.
Correct.
Except in past generations, we didn't live that long, so it may have been a peak of experience, of adulthood at that point. And some people lived into their 70s, but a lot of people died by midlife crisis by age 45. So there's that. So what are you saying they would have differently? How would they look at this differently? Um, and taking into account that this is going to be squaring the 1992 and 93 folks who had the Uranus Neptune conjunction in Capricorn, um, and had their Saturn return about 7 years ago, and so now are going to be on their Saturn square. Um, uh, well, two different age groups. I'm sorry, two different populations, but how is that going to differ? I mean, how does it?
I think everyone is going through their trend. So my Pluto square first, and then my Uranus opposition. Some of these things are going to start changing. Now that has to do with the Pluto orbit, but everything is being moved a little bit later. That's what I'm noticing in my readings now, and what I started to notice last year, that people that were 29 still hadn't actually had their Saturn return yet. So I just think that it's going to be a learning curve for us as much for giving a reading as it will be for the new generation as they're trying to get advice, figure out what they're. I just don't think it's going to look the same as maybe the way that we experienced it.
I certainly think that it's going to be difficult in some ways because we'll find out whether our theory is solid or not in terms of uh, Saturn being in Aries being in its fall, because these people, how will these people react when we say it's time to settle down and discipline yourself into one marriage, one home, one career, one, whatever. In other words, time to put your 30s into action.
Yeah,
Will
well,
they?
with the Neptune Uranus conjunction of the early 90s, that maybe that traditional family isn't the answer. And so again, that might have been our answer. So this would be a way that we could adjust our readings. Is that might have been the answer when we were going through that, but we have to change with the changing times and notice what is different now and how can we adjust the advice that we give them.
Yeah, I would qualify what I meant. That's always the answer in terms of traditional settling down, but it's always subject to what that current group's transits are. So I'm not, I mean, even my generation, we had Uranus square Saturn. And so at our Saturn return, that didn't mean that it was going to work settling down. And that just meant that's what we were going to face is that Uranus was squaring our settled down, um, uh, drives after our 20s of communal living. So go ahead, Kristen.
Oh, I was going to add that I feel like with um, Neptune especially being involved, it's going to be so difficult because like Meghna was saying, they have all of these dreams, all of these ideas, these wants, desires that they see for themselves, but it's a fog, right? They can't see the other side. They're like, which path do I take? And I think that's going to be something that we're probably going to have more people asking, like, I have all these options, I want all of these things, but they don't know which is the right one immediately or where to go from there. And I think that's one of the things we'll probably be asked the most, or maybe not the most, but one of the things like, I have all these options, which is the best? Or maybe I feel like I have no options, where do I go?
That's sort of what I fear, is that,
Mhm.
yeah, that's what we're going to be facing, being asked, and they want us to answer that question.
Mhm. Mhm.
And we can't answer that question.
No.
We have to tell them
Yes,
that
people a lot.
that's what's there is Neptune, and you're
Mhm.
going to have to answer that question. We can give them tools, or
Yeah.
whatever, but yeah, I think we'll be faced with that a lot as we can't, we won't have, we don't have that answer for you.
Mhm.
We'll do our best, but we can't answer that.
Mhm.
Well, and it comes from their, inner work. I feel like we're there to help deliver a message, and then they get to go home and can sit and contemplate more. It doesn't have to end, there at the table. I always like to give people questions to go home and, okay, we're not going to know everything now. Here's a bunch of questions to go home and contemplate and ask yourself, and to work on, and to really incorporate the reading into play. And I think especially with, Neptune and Saturn, we have that dreamy, mixed with the structure and the discipline. So it's, okay, how do you bring those together to unite where they're not, opposing and, tipping off of a scale? They can both be amazing. And it just depends on who we're reading for, what their personalities, are, and in their chart, which things do they kind of, have to hone in? Are they kind of, tipping over too much? And then especially with being, with Aries, and that emperor archetype is, I feel like Saturn and, Aries can work well, because it's like, okay, I can be, disciplined, and then I can go and like put this into action. And, some, the Aries portion might be like, oh, Neptune, don't like wash me out too much. I need to like do what I need to do. But it's allowing some of that dreaminess and that intuitive, that really, I feel like it's really a time to trust our gut feeling, know what that is, help that, create our decisions, because it can be kind of, oh, dreaming something up, but it's like, does that really feel like the right thing? Knowing our difference between what is, fear that's coming up, what's just anticipation or, anxiety. But it's really a time to dream, but trust your gut in which path or which door to go through.
Yeah. Magda?
My mind just went completely blank. I had a lot to say, but I think the thing that I'm really aware of right now is that Pluto's in Aquarius, and it's sextiling everything that's happening here. And the piece about the Aquarius piece that I want to bring in is that these are people who are turning 29 and 30 with AI. And so I really resonate with what Ginger, you've been saying about, we have to start looking at things really differently, because nobody knows what the heck is happening right now. Like, jobs are getting eliminated. I mean, I'm reading things about like how AI is better at diagnosing diseases than human doctors are sometimes. And they're replacing all kinds of professions. I just read this morning, you can have $1 billion company potentially now with 1 or 2 employees. And that's unheard of in the time that up to now. So I think that people are coming of age, like this first Saturn return, this maturation pulse. And it's like Saturn in fall. It's like all my structures are falling apart. Neptune, the dissolving agent, right? My structures are getting dissolved. So where do I stand? Where do I take all this fire that I have inside of me? And what do I, it's like fire on the ocean kind of thing, like the worst possible thing that can happen is fire on the ocean for somebody on a boat, right? And I always think of Saturn Neptune as like Saturn helping us navigate the ocean of Neptune. But if you light a match on a boat and you don't know how to deal with that match, then you got to learn how to navigate that fire. And then, so how do you do that? It's going to be like exactly what this moment is asking, is kind of what Tara, you were just saying about the gut instinct, but also Aries finds itself in motion. You got to move into things and discover it as you're kind of taking action. Or at least that's one of the ways I look at Aries, is that you discover who you are in motion. And so if you sit and think too much, or if you're feeling depressed about it, take some action, something small, something, like even if it is like turn on a YouTube video and work out, just do something, because the settling is not what Aries wants. So it's like, give it some motion, and then it'll free up the juices. It'll invite the muses back into the fray, and it'll cleanse us, through the action. We kind of get cleansed also. So those are some of
Yeah, good point. even in an interview on one of the astrology things, Rick Levine goes into how much we don't know about this transit.
Yeah.
It's totally new, and yeah, on a mundane level, um, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's like I don't know what to tell you. It's like AI is going to take my job.
Yeah.
Not soon, but within a couple of years it could. And my day job, watching brainwaves, the computer is going to be able to do that as reliably or more than what I do. And I'm paid pretty well to sit there boringly and watch four people's brainwaves go by for 4 hours. So yeah, we may not know what to tell anybody, definitely.
I feel
I think
everyone's making a lot of
power. Oh,
mistakes though, too, where, you know, if you put in something as far as astrology or tarot, I feel like it gets a lot of things wrong. You have to fact check it. I don't think it's quite there yet, you know, maybe at some point, and maybe we're only years away from that happening. Sometimes I'm amazed that it's even a product that was put out with all the mistakes it gets because of how reality is just, and facts and knowledge are going to be kind of like skewed where it seems, uh, you still have to do the work. But one of the questions that came up, I think was something that you were saying, Magna, is
Can't
something that
quite
came up
hear
for
you,
this.
Sarah.
Something that came up for this is as a question is, how do we live in surrender while still remaining active? And then vice versa of that is, how do we remain active while feeling like we're also kind of sitting there and like doing nothing, and sort of that, being in this very, in between stage, experiencing, it reminds me of some yoga nidra practices that I've done where it's like, okay, on one side you have to feel love and then you have to feel hate. Now feel them together. And so it is that balance of, like you were talking about, having that action, Aries wanting that action. Well, how can you do that while also, just remaining still? And again, you don't have to answer that right now, but like, it's just something to, I think about during this time.
One thing, as you guys know, I'm as a Saturn son, I'm always looking at history, and one of the times that Neptune went into Aries was the Athenian plague. That was um, sorry, 430 BC, and Pluto was at 27 degrees Capricorn. So actually, Pluto was almost into Aquarius, which would have made that sextile that we're seeing now, the Neptune, Pluto sextile. And one of the things that happened during the Athenian plague was that when death and change were so in everybody's face, that morality went down the wayside. People were selling everything, people were stealing, people were uh, uh, live well living their inheritance instead of thinking of their kids, just squandering their money. People were acting in very um, unpredictable and wild sorts of ways, uh, because all they were looking at is either, live today or die. So I don't know that that's going to be replicated now, but I just wanted to throw that out. And looking at history, uh, of course, the Neptune in 1861 was the American Civil War, but it was also the Taiping Revolution, and 30 million people died in that revolution. And I'm reading a book on it right now. But I'd already put that, or we actually missed that in my Neptune into Aries talk, that I gave last year. Um, I missed that one completely, and so did Catherine Urban, who also did a talk at the time. She's out of Ohio. Yeah, the typing revolution started in 1858, but went through 1864. Was based on a man in China that decided after he failed the civil service exam 4 times, which is like death in China, um, at that time in the bureaucracy, decided that he was Jesus's brother and was here to save China. Started the typing revolution, which gathered together, besides the delusional religious quotient to it, really solid socialistic and communistic elements that were still admired by Mao Zedong years later, but 30 million people. So Neptune in Aries is not necessarily pretty. In 60 AD, that's when Paul finished his writings to the Romans and basically started Christianity. Because Christianity, up until that point, was not a religion; it was a following or a group of people who studied whoever Jesus was. No, it became a religion and proceeded to kill thousands of people that didn't believe the way the Roman Church wanted you to believe. I'm not fond of any of the Middle Eastern religions, but anyway. So yeah, looking at history, Neptune in Aries has never been pretty, ever. Well, unless you're on that side of the thought process that's being emulated by the beginning of that Neptune coming out, which was uh, Christianity, even in China
Mhm.
in 1860. But yeah, anti-slavery in this country, interesting. And let me segue. And so something that we won't necessarily address per each client, but what about the generations being born right now with this sextile of Pluto to Neptune to Uranus? Are they going to be very special? I mean, we've all lived with the Pluto Neptune sextile
Mhm.
generationally, all of us. So that in itself has been special for us. But yeah, it's going to be even more special. I don't know that we can cover that today. I'm just unless anybody has given that some thought already and has some comments on it. So Megna, you've been focused on the Saturn Neptune, but we pull the other sextiles into that.
Yeah, I love, it's one of my favorite things that's happened for almost everybody alive right now is the sorry, not Saturn, Neptune, Pluto sextile. I think of them, the way I've described them to people is like, if you think of Pluto as psychology and Neptune as spirituality, I feel like what it's done is to bring psychology to spirituality and spirituality to psychology. And so it's almost like 2 feet walking. And it's like you do the psychology foot, you look at your crap, you excavate inside, like, what are my wounded places? What is that distorting me into? Where am I saying I want something, which is really based on an unmet need, an unmet desire, a wound, a place that I got hurt. And then you look at that, and then you invite the spirituality, the surrender, as you were talking about earlier, Tara. The surrender is like, okay, I don't have to do the slog myself. I like doing the Pluto work can sometimes feel like you're just digging with a pickaxe. And here comes Neptune, spirituality. And it's like, and it just like takes it in this huge swell of an ocean that just cleans everything out. And I've experienced that personally, that when I do my spiritual practices alongside my inner work, it happens so much more quickly. And then now you add the Uranus piece, now you've got a third leg, and is that third leg wings? Is that third leg a stool that stabilizes this process? I'm not quite sure how that shows up, but Uranus is, or does it blow it up, because it's Uranus, like blow it up and bring new meaning to the whole process. And it's in Gemini, so it's kind of like two legs, because it's coming into this Geminian piece of it. And so, and we know what Uranus and Gemini has been throughout history, at least recent history, with the Civil War, World War II, maybe even the Revolution. I think it was in Gemini, American Revolution, I mean, and maybe the French Revolution too. So I'm thinking that this Uranus, in the myth that I've been doing with Saturn and Neptune, Uranus pushes Gaia's children down because they're not perfect enough. And he has to be unseated. But here, Uranus, I also think of as the rebel genius. It's like, okay, we've been thinking about spirituality and psychology in one way, but are we giving up our inner genius? Are we giving up truth to ourselves in service to other people's ideas of things? I'm not quite sure exactly how that shows up, but those are the places where I would go, is like, where am I being called to stop repressing things in me that I thought I need them to be perfect? Where is the quiet voice that's saying, yeah, we're doing all these things and we're climbing these mountains that people tell us are the worthy mountains to climb, but are they mine to climb? Like, I don't know. And I want to like throw all this over and find my own path. And I think in some ways, if we look at all the things that are happening with technology, it is going to give us the option to find new paths and to rediscover who we are as everything around us blows up in some way. Like everything we understood and knew is going away. Like career paths are disappearing. Things that we thought, people are talking about like massive deflation. They're talking about high universal basic income and universal high income, and like so many other things are coming into play. We're going to be asking questions about our individuality, and where are we repressing it, and where are we giving it space without overthrowing the psychology and the spirituality, I hope, because I think that's what's going to keep us grounded and human in the world of tech. And I think the Pluto Neptune keep us human, and Uranus is like, and who are we as humans?
The Uranus in Gemini is also the lower side of Gemini, which is quite possibly could be AI, except that what is AI built of? It's built of all our knowledge that they have stolen and put into a computer. So it's basically the high and low side of Gemini. Yeah, we can
That's what
do.
I was going to add.
Go ahead.
I was going to add that too, Alan, with like AI and everything. Uranus, we always think like, oh, technology booms and like all of this like big, expansive. And Gemini can also be like just tons of information overload, right? So all of this information coming in that they're stealing. And I'm really hoping that we see some regulations on AI, because AI is fallible. Like it does make mistakes and it needs to, it's not, I don't think it's really ready yet for like to do all of the things that we hope and we want it to do. And like Megna was saying too, there's talk about like universal basic income and things like that that, should be in place to help more people. But I also always think with Uranus, not only do we have that technology side of it, but we have that want of freedom and individuality to just, you know, be different for difference's sake sometimes. Um, that was my little 2 cents on it.
Mhm. Ginger,
Um,
you're the one with Gemini midheaven, so you're in charge.
I know. Um, as far as the people being born now, I think of it as with Uranus going into Gemini and trining Pluto. Pluto rules fear and power. Uranus can be anxiety. So we could look at this as like a technological thing. It could be a breaking free of technology. So I wonder if the children being born now will be of two camps or more, several camps. Those that really want to be free of technology and those that are really integrated into it. I think the next couple of years are really going to influence that because obviously we're about to have a Uranus conjunction with Mars, right? This summer. So there will be people born with that. I have a parent with a Uranus Mars conjunction, born in 47. So that's an interesting combination. So I think that people will be able to free themselves of the fear of being overtaken by technology. And I also think people will be afraid of it. You know, we often think of trines as being this free flowing energy, but what we forget is that it's unconscious. So if people have unconscious anxiety and fear, how are they going to need help? You know, if it becomes a feedback loop that they're just afraid. And if then you have really powerful people that can break themselves from their fears or their anxiety, you know, I think we'll have wild swings from one camp to the other. And to piggyback on something you said earlier about the history, Alan, about people just like spending their inheritances and whatnot. In the 80s, in the late 80s with the AIDS epidemic, a lot of people saw their friends dying. And so if they were then diagnosed with AIDS, it also was a trend to just quit your job and spend everything you've got and to go on that trip you always wanted. And then they came out with drugs. And people continued living when they didn't think that they would. So if something like that were to happen again, that obviously would influence the children being born to the people who went through that. So I think it'll be, I mean, it's such a huge hypothetical. Who knows? Who knows? It'll be fun to watch this in the future and go, we were so wrong. But it's interesting to think about. And yeah, I think that's my 2 cents.
Oh,
I was just noticing your background, Ginger, has the letters RIES, which is being blocked. The S is being blocked by a car right now. I wonder if it says Aries. What does it say back there?
Oh, I
Yeah.
have no idea. I'm not
it's the
sure.
other side behind the car. I was gonna, while we wait for that car to move, I was gonna mention though, Magna, that World War II was actually Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus going over Hitler's chart in Taurus. And it's only at the end of World War II that Jupiter had gone into Gemini and then Uranus finally got into Gemini. And the net result is that American GIs and everybody else had traveled all through Europe. Many children were born, double citizenship there. In other words, the Gemini at that time just was sort of like throwing everything up in the air after, whereas the Taurus or the Uranus and Taurus and Saturn was actually land acquisition for Germany. It was all about land and all about possession and all about, identity, personal identity, Germans reasserting their dominant identity over Europe, as well as going for gas and oil supplies in the Caspian Sea and other areas. But yeah, the net result was that the whole formula was turned upside down with all the travel, which is Gemini, which ended up happening with Americans and everybody going through Europe and meeting people and mixing and matching. So in a way, it was just that's probably what we're facing again is just um, uh, lots of it's a mutable sign. It lots of change, lots of exciting and well, it's like any traveler. I mean, you don't when you hit a foreign port, you're going to be met by 16 people who want your money, you
Right.
know, who are going to guide you through the town for most of your wallet, you know. So there's that side of Gemini. I I wanted to mention the one transit that I saw last year, and I am remiss in not watching this over the 25 years that I've done this. Is that the 1999 to 2000 folks are not yet close to their Saturn and Taurus return, but Pluto is on their Neptune at 3 degrees of Aquarius. And some of them have the South Node at 3 degrees of Aquarius conjunct that Neptune. So they're born of families that did not give them certain definites, that may not have talked about the elephant in the room, which is the alcoholic parent or whatever, or may have been totally loving but didn't give their kids a definite purpose in life. In other words, didn't fill them with a cause or a direction. They've had to sort that out themselves. and 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 Pluto is hitting that. So to me, that's therapy time, right?
Yeah. It's
Basically,
asking for some transformation or change.
yeah. And time to look at your stuff, time to look at what you haven't faced with the Neptune South Node. So we may see that again. And interestingly enough, I think it was spring, we we saw 35 Saturn in Aries, but we saw 44 Saturn in Taurus. And that's unusual for them to show up early for their Saturn return. But they had Pluto on their Neptune. So we may see that
So
again. Go ahead.
so if Neptune dissolves things and the oh, hold on 1 second. I apologize. There was a fire truck. I bring the chaos today.
Yes.
Mars and
Gemini in the
Saturn.
midheaven.
All of it. So, anywho, if Neptune dissolves things and their south node is there, I wonder if they will be quicker than maybe previous generations and letting go of the way they feel most comfortable.
That's a good point.
Well, what would Pluto do there?
I mean, again, if I go back to fear and control, if you're forced to face your fear, or be in control of a situation that you're way too young to need to have to do, it could force you to change sooner.
Yeah, like a sink or swim kind of, like literally like a sink or swim. Good luck. You know,
Yeah,
Mhm.
except what's the other transit in the year 2000? What are they facing? Huh.
I mean,
Just
I
throw
have
out the
my
complexity
ephemeris.
there.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't know.
the Saturn square in Taurus.
Mm.
Mm.
So they want resilience, they want permanence, they want security, they don't
Ability.
want to dissolve.
Mhm.
Maybe that's what they're afraid of. And they might be able to confront that early, or not be able, but they might be confronting that early.
It, and I'm admitting my blind spot here. I mean, how would you phrase that to a person, um, in less than 15 minutes? Um, that as you're growing towards your Saturn return and wanting to deal with your need to deal with security and safety, you're also potentially dissolving right now.
Mhm.
Well, the thing that comes to mind as a hypothetical example would be, let's say your parents always told you that they were going to pay for your college, or they're paying for your college, and then the stock market drops and there's no money to pay for college. So, what are you going to do? Are you going to drop out of school and get a job and save up so you can go back? Or is there another way you can do this? Or do you need to make a hard pivot? And what comes to me with this hypothetical is, well, this isn't fair. Well, we're all faced with things that aren't fair. And maybe this is also why their Saturn return is coming later, is that they're given some time to catch up. Now,
Mhm.
granted, this is all hypothetical, so who knows if we'll see any of that, but that's what comes to my mind as an example.
But that's why I wanted to get together and talk. And I used to do this, but hadn't done it in a few years before the festival, because it is hypothetical,
Mhm.
that's what we're going to be facing. And so I don't know what I would tell them. I don't have a
Yeah,
clue right now. I mean, I can explain the dynamic,
yeah.
Mhm.
which that's almost 30, 40, 50% of a person's growth is giving them permission to know, yeah, this is what you're going through. So an astrologer can see this and explain it to you. We may not have a solution for you, and we may not even have the right to have a solution for you, because either we're an older generation, you have to face this, or just as a human, you have to find the solution. But it's 50% to say this is the. I was explaining this to somebody who's not an astrologer, but a contra dancer who was a psychiatrist, and I was explaining to him that after a Pluto transit, Pluto has gone well on its way, and I'm thinking of the 1980s when Pluto went through Scorpio over Scorpio's charts. Um, I have at times throughout doing these readings explained to people that Pluto is gone on its way and it's just time to get a life again,
Mm.
and to
Mhm.
stop dwelling on, this pithy area of life that you've been dwelling on. Pluto's gone. You did the work or you didn't do the work, but Pluto has gone on its way. And he was like, no, 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 that's wrong. That's wrong. You can't tell a person that. They always have to work on their stuff. And I said, but the obverse is also true, is that when Pluto is hitting their chart, and their family is gaslighting them into saying, you should be well, you should be functioning, you should be doing what you're supposed to be doing. And Pluto's saying, no, you're dead stop. Time for therapy, time for analysis. We also give them the permission to say, No, I'm fucked up right now, and that's okay. That's
Mhm.
where I need to be. That's I don't know what's going to come out of it, but I am not functional right now, and astrology says that's okay. That's where you need to be and where you need to work out of. So we give permission in both senses, either to go on, to move on, and Scorpios were hanging on to their pain, believe me, long after Pluto's gone out of Scorpio, and giving permission to somebody to actually shut down and work on stuff and say, I can't function right now. I have to really work on me, I can't just be
Mhm.
superficial. So that what I'm saying is, I mean, we can share that with the client, but we don't necessarily have the solution of what to do or where to
Mhm.
go. And especially in this situation when they have Saturn in Taurus, somewhere in their mind they know they're supposed to be functional and stay functional at a time what they may not want to be.
Well, I think with it in Taurus, I would ask them where they can find like homeostasis within themselves, like their physical body, right? Like, sure, nothing, maybe everything is outside of their control. Fires everywhere, right? The ship is sinking. There's nothing they can do except control how they react to the situation and then ask them
Good
where
point.
they can do that
Yeah,
and,
good
and
point.
apply it. Yeah.
The other piece is, all of us probably have lived through Pluto transiting our own natal Neptunes. And if we look back to what was happening at the time when Pluto transited our natal Neptune, then there's some insights to be drawn from that. The challenges that came up at that time and the solutions we found out of those challenges that we faced. I feel like you got to like go back to the archetypal pieces, like Pluto is coming to show you where you have repressed things. Pluto is coming to show you where you are delusional with Neptune, where you've been deluding yourself. And maybe it's coming to Neptune and saying, hey, especially as this sextile between Pluto and Neptune is happening, where are you taking flights of fancy into spirituality where you actually have to do some deeper work and you can't just do spiritual bypassing and you can't you wish your way into this thing. Like you have to actually take that pickaxe and dig here. And the places, Aquarian places, what house it is, ideally, what area of life you're going to be digging in, where you might have deluded yourself in those areas, and then looking at the places where you have delusions. And then finding, like, the Phoenix Rising piece. It's like, I remember my Pluto Neptune, and it was a really, really hard time and a really, really amazing time too. And I discovered friendships that showed, like, blew my socks off of what is possible with spirituality. And I was in my 20s. It was a long time ago, and I met people but before that, I got really, really depressed. And I went and I was in like some pretty dysfunctional spaces, and and then I found these people, and I changed my spirituality. It changed my relationship to that dysfunctional group of people that I was interacting with. A lot of huge things happened at that time. And it changed the trajectory of how I pursued both my spirituality and my inner work. And those are kind of big things for me. So that made a huge difference in my life. And it set me up for things that came after it also. Like these people who I met opened doors for me in places I didn't know there were even doors to open. So I think if we think back to what was happening for us, it will help us shed some light for our clients too. And then looking at the house placement will be huge too.
Well, it happened to me in 1982, exactly conjunct my descendant. So you can guess what happened on my Neptune. So you can guess what happened to me. Um,
Um,
After that divorce, a short marriage and divorce, which was a train wreck. Um, what I would say is that coming out of that, I mean, I did survive, but I felt like a planet that had been hit by an asteroid that pushed it out of orbit. And I was in a new orbit, and I'll
Mm.
never be in that old orbit again. And you know, it's a new life. It
Mhm.
just, you know, I'll never be the same person that I was, and the expectations that I had of marriage and relationship. Who'd we lose? Oh, we lost Tara.
Tara, we lost Tara.
Um, yeah, sorry, that distracted me. But I guess, you know, part of that is that we can reassure a person, but warn them at the same time.
Mhm.
You may never be the same person, as you were saying, Magna. You know, um, things are going to change.
Yeah, you're talking about dropping out of orbit, and Tara dropped out of orbit.
Can't make this stuff up, right? Yeah,
I
Nope.
just find it really, I just feel like the universe is kind of showing us things even as we're interacting on this,
yeah.
and then I noticed also that, Kristen, you took off your top layer as we started talking about
Oh.
this Pluto and Neptune interaction. Like Pluto wants us to shed layers. It's like, what are you?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my moon and Pluto are conjunct actually, so that's another fun fact.
Yeah.
Another fun fact. I was actually looking to see like when that transit had happened for me.
Yeah,
Uh,
I was looking it up as well.
What did you guys find? Did you find
I
it? Or?
no, not yet.
I found
Uh,
mine. I
Oh,
have
what?
my trusty ephemeris.
Mhm.
so good.
Yeah, it was right as I was graduating college. I was very distracted at this time. I was engaged to a young man that I couldn't possibly marry.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
yes, everything changed after that.
What house was
I
that?
fourth house.
Fourth house.
So my Neptune is opposite Venus, so that makes total sense. Venus in the
Uh,
10th house.
Mm.
Tara's back.
Was it
Okay.
all very private and like behind closed doors a little bit?
I don't know. It wasn't public. I mean, I don't know.
Just because the fourth house makes me think of that sometimes.
You know what? Actually, this is really trigger warning. This is sad. Um, I am the only person
Hmm.
in my family to have gone to college and gotten a degree. And my father was very proud of me. And maybe less than 10 days before I graduated, my stepbrother, who was in prison, committed suicide. And my father had to be there for his wife and could not come to my graduation. So that
Oh,
would have been at this time. Yeah. So fourth house, Pluto. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, that's heavy for sure.
interesting.
And
The country that has a fourth house Pluto transit right now is Israel,
mm,
and it's their Pluto
Hmm.
opposite.
yeah,
It's their
yeah.
Pluto opposition, and it's hitting their fourth house nadir. And we have
Hmm.
an exact time of birth for Israel because they did it at the end of the Sabbath at 4 p.m. on May 4th, 1840 or 1948.
Look
Yeah.
at all the stuff they're doing now.
Well, they're trying to take over the entire area.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, I can't comment on it. Obviously everybody else hates them. They have to be safe, and yet they're acting like the Nazis that killed them. Basically, you know, they're taking over the West Bank. They're you know, they devastated Gaza. I don't know. I mean, I can't comment rationally on Israel, but we can I can say that's the effect of Pluto in the fourth house. It's going to totally
Mhm.
remake who your homeland and who you are. And we can ask Ginger, did you move at that point, or did you remake a home, or did obviously your family was totally disrupted.
Yeah, so the gentleman I was seeing, we were really good friends. We just weren't great partners. And he ended up moving back to our home state. I was living in Oregon at the time. And so I was freshly graduated and had to pay for my apartment all by myself. And I navigated that for 6 months until I realized that I had to make some other changes. And I moved from over that period of Pluto just going through my fourth house. I moved from my home state to Oregon, from Oregon back to my home state to a completely different state, and then back to my home state again, trying to find my way.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
yeah,
Where
a lot of
was
moves.
was Neptune in your fourth
Ne
natally?
Neptune's in my fourth in both pole sign and cove. Um, and Jupiter, well, for trad astrology, Jupiter rules over Sagittarius. Well, I guess it does in modern as well. And Jupiter is in my first house. So in Coke houses, it would be in my 12th house.
Hmm. Yeah, we'll leave that for another day. We'll argue about that first weekend, whether working as an astrologer in a Renaissance festival is 12th house or first house.
Oof.
I mean, I Gemini in the 10th. I'm gonna say it's good. It's happy to be both.
Yeah.
Both are
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah. Appropriate cop out. I mean, uh, assessment. Yeah.
I mean, as you're asking us how we're going to advise our clients, we do that with compassion and hopefully I do it with some
Mhm.
humor.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. Yeah. I told what's her name? Our new craft director. I was in the office yesterday, and I told her that my astrologers feel that we're more exciting than just a thrill level of one. And,
Yes.
and she looked at me like deer in the headlights. I said, Sadie, that's a joke.
Yeah, Saturn
Oh,
people have to,
okay.
yeah. Saturn people have to
Yeah,
let people know they're joking because sometimes they come off a little too deadpan, Alan.
you know. Any other thoughts before we wrap it up? And we should wrap it up just so that I am not Chris Brennan. I'm not going to do 8 hour Zooms that force people to sit and not that it's
What?
not good information. We
You
could
don't want
talk
to hang
for
out with us for 8 hours?
yeah, I do. We could talk for hours, but
There's no
nobody would watch.
force.
What's that?
I said there's no force. It's all
Yeah,
consented.
yeah.
Mhm.
Any other cards that we missed, Tara? Um,
Um,
Oh, I
not
had a
that
thought on
I
that,
can
Tara.
think of right at the
go ahead.
beginning of my mind. There is something I dabble in a lot of different books and had my nose in one, and I'm trying to remember which one it was. Sometimes I'm reading like five different things at the same time, so I have to
I
find out
wanted
what
to
this
hear
is.
your
But
thoughts,
there's
Tara. I
Go ahead,
wanted to
yes,
William.
hear, yeah, I wanted to hear
okay.
Tara's thoughts on like the tower card being like that Neptune Mars dissolution in a way.
Can I get right? I'll get right back to answering that. I want to read this one little
Yeah,
quote
yeah.
here. And so I'll let you know which book this is. We can mark it in the YouTube. But it just kind of sounded like this time when I was discussing the Hanged Man before, right? It being that time of like, this feels really uncomfortable. I don't know what's going on. I want things to work out one way, and that's not what's happening. And we're noticing, you know, like we've all been discussing about AI or just changes or people with jobs, everyone to kind of, you know, come to this point. Do I still, you know, do I keep going or do I not? You know, like you were just saying before, Ginger, when you were using that example about, you know, college, you know, and the money not being there, and what do I do? Being in that stage, it's, you know, it's very frustrating. It's not fun. We don't really, you know, understand what's going on sometimes. And there's something that I've read, this little excerpt that I took out from a book that I found interesting. And there's a quote, it says, Bernadette Roberts writes, of the personality's desire to control the spiritual experience. I think you were talking about a little bit about that before, Magna, right? How, when you were sharing some of your story too. And it says, it was from this silence that a new life emerged, a new energy that without any sweetness or delight was the powerful flame of love, a flame that would never be extinguished until it had consumed its unitive partner, the self, right? Extinguished, we're talking about all this fire. I call this flame an energy because this is its experience. Initially, I made the mistake of thinking this flame or energy belonged as equally to me as it did to God, and whatever anybody wants to use in that, you know, in that presence there. But went on to make the bewildering discovery that I could never use tap to it, increase it, decrease it, express it in any way to the outside, and in the end discovered it was not mine and had never been. And then the writer goes on to say, at some point, a week, a month, a year, or a lifetime into the transformative process, our personality realizes that it cannot control the life experience. Worse, it never did. This realization is crucial, but it can be difficult. It is often accompanied by pain, rage, and sorrow. Eventually, in the wake of helplessness and hopelessness comes peace. So I feel like that's almost this space that we're in, or, you know, where a lot of people coming to us might be experiencing this thing and of wanting to, okay, I have this plan and this is how it's supposed to go. And it's being able to, again, with that surrender, like, okay, I had the plan and this is the steps. Maybe it's not happening that way. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen, right? Maybe we just have to like redirect or like think of it from another way. Or maybe that is just not the path we're to go on. There might be something else, but when we don't know, right? Having that Pluto, being a Scorpio myself, I feel like you totally called me out before. You know.
Oh yeah, I didn't mean to.
You did.
Same.
But it's, you know, being that Phoenix, right, rising of like, okay, something has to die for something else to be reborn. And the way that we're focused on something, sometimes we just sort of have to like stop. I think someone was saying before, you know, like stop pushing on the gas for a minute. And there's something else that's blooming out of it. And we have to sit and, you know, it's not to not feel that frustration, but it's also to be like, okay, what is this time allowing for me right now? What is opening up that I don't see? When we're so focused on how it's supposed to be, we're missing little clips that are coming in. You know, is there something else somebody really wanted to do? Maybe that's the opportunity to focus on that instead. But I think it's having some patience to, you know, when we're doing the readings with people, some things might be right there, but some things might be a sequence of like over time, somebody might watch something, they might read something in a book, somebody might say something. It's just going to be these little like bits that come in that are going to be like, oh, okay, there's that little clue. I didn't really know. I didn't even think of that. That wasn't even in my consciousness before, but here's this thing. And so I think it's time to really pay attention to what shows up. And if we're too preoccupied and overconsumed with thinking about the other thing, we're missing all the signs that can potentially come in and redirect us, and being open to allowing ourselves other opportunities than what we had, allowing that rigidity to kind of like, Neptune to be like, okay, kind of like break that up a little bit. You don't have to go exactly by the book or, totally, all these steps or do this, in order. Have the discipline, but don't be so like hard on the edges with it. That makes
I hadn't
sense.
even thought of the Tower card, but that's so appropriate to the Neptune, Saturn, Mars
Yeah.
transit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mars and Neptune coming in saying, you thought you had a structure, we're going to just blow that away with the wind and the rain, and
Yeah.
It
then
was
we'll find
it was
out what.
actually the card that I got for my like month reading for April was the Tower card. And I was like, oh great, this is just lovely.
Yeah.
And I like that card.
I mean, it's a great card, but it's also
I
like
mean, I
a
don't necessarily like what happens in it, but it, at that time, it's uncomfortable, but it's
yes.
allowing something else to come through, for, a personal experience of mine, a tower moment was, I couldn't walk for a year and I was bedridden. And at the time that seemed absolutely terrible. I had to sleep sitting up for 6 months. I couldn't cough, sneeze, cry. I was, immediately in pain. I couldn't get out of bed to go to the bathroom, to take a shower. I thought my life was over. I'm like, okay, this is it. I'm young. Like, what's happening? And in that moment, it's like we all have a choice. And I realized, at that time, I can sit here and I can feel sorry for myself, or I can really try to envision walking again, even though I was told I wouldn't walk again. I was like, nope, I'm not. That's not my reality. I'm not gonna accept that. And not that I was delusional about it. I was just like, I'm not gonna just give in to that right now. I'm gonna try. And and here I am walking. And whether or not I was, what am I gonna do with that time? So it's like these tower moments happen, and when we look back, on our lives, anything that just seemed like it was going to destroy us, what happened? What happened for you? What happened immediately after that? What did you, learn from that? What kind of, how did that humble you? Or what kind of humility, did you have? To be in that space, I don't wish that upon anybody. But I feel like I could relate to people on a certain way through that, where I can appreciate, I'm walking down the street lots of times and I'm like, wow, I'm walking, and I that I do, I'm like, wow, I'm so thankful that I, have this right now. But those tower moments, it's like, what's that saying where, the world, like, will move mountains sometimes, like we're not going to place ourselves somewhere, but something so intense has to happen to get us to like move, to really like light that flame under us and like take us off like a rocket in those moments. It's not just the like, oh, we're just going to simmer on the stove here. It's like, no, we're going to like, blast you off, and it's going to, shock you, and you're not going to feel comfortable about it. But where were you placed after those moments that, for some people, you could have moved, you could have gotten out of a relationship, you could have, that wasn't good for you. Like, what is it that happened? Where did it take you? And it's, it can be scary in the moment, but on the other side, it's like, oh, I wouldn't have done that. I was too comfortable. I would have never actually like moved and done whatever. Sometimes you get fired, from a job, and then it's like, oh, okay, well, if I didn't get fired from that job, I wouldn't have started my own business doing something else. So, I like to look at it as those kind of,
Well, I think you're
where those
absolutely
things
right,
can.
because sometimes without those tower moments, we would never make those transitions or changes in our lives. And unfortunately, I think that's just how humans are. sometimes we need the
Mhm.
discomfort and the pain to move forward.
Yeah. Feeling
That
collapsed.
just triggered
Mhm.
another group I forgot about that could take another hour, and that's another group that we'll be seeing and that's the Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter group in Libra, 1982 to 83,
Mm-hmm.
who will now be in midlife crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And the one person that couldn't join us today was Lessa, who's also born in that time period. She's the woman that did my booth in North Carolina last fall. She's an Aquarius with that stellium in Libra. Um, so we could have gotten her perspective. But will that group with a Saturn Pluto, will they be likely to be very graceful about needing to change their lives and move through midlife transition in the next 2 years?
Mm-hmm.
Or will they fight that? Or will they resent us even bringing it up? Or and yet that I mean I wrote a whole book on midlife transition, so I can't necessarily avoid talking about that when they come for a reading. And by the way, with that Neptune in the tower, Kristen, we'll just
Mm-hmm.
um, get you used to reading in the rain.
I mean, a little rain doesn't hurt anything, right?
Yes, it
Just kidding,
does.
just kidding.
Oh, I have an
We
umbrella
can
this
take
year
him,
too.
Kristen. We can take him.
I know. I know. Wait, he promised me an awning before we started recording, okay?
Yeah, I'll show you that. Again, where is that? Um, it's something that I have already. Where's the share screen again? Darn it.
Kristen too, the Neptune with the Pisces energy that
Yeah.
comes gets along, the tower and being having a lot of Scorpio energy in that. It's like,
Hmm.
they get along
Yeah, they
This
do.
really, really
this
well. You
this
know what I mean? And it's you
Oh, I
know,
see.
Yeah, this
Oh,
happens to fit the measurements of these are 5 foot apart. So I could make something with this, but it's not done yet, and I don't know.
okay.
I'm not guaranteeing anything right now.
I'm open-minded.
Yeah,
How would we just stick it up on something?
it would
I
be
don't know.
folded up under the existing roof, and then just pull it out in a quick way, or just keep it out there if the fair doesn't mind. But I'm taking chances too. I mean, I have a structure already that's been okayed, but that's not okayed.
Right.
You know, we'll see.
Hmm.
I mean, we'll see. And new
Yeah.
owners. So, and
getting
if
too
if it's a
cold.
heavy rain, then we don't need 3 readers anyway.
No, absolutely. But
But if it's a short rain, then it's it
I
it
just don't
saves.
want my planets floating around my board.
No,
Like,
Right,
what is
exactly. And
no. We
and a
work
sog.
so hard on our boards.
I know.
We
And
have to
soggy
protect
ephemeris
them.
and
I'm
yeah,
so glad I sprayed it with like acrylic or like whatever, like a matte finish spray, so it was not ruined. That was
yeah.
Yeah.
important.
And heaven forbid putting a tarot reader out there because they can't operate without 15 decks, right?
I say we take a vote of who should go out there.
Ah, is this a democracy? I've actually sat out there a few times, so give me a break here.
Yeah, he did. He did. He did.
Yeah.
We could become your Saturn, Mars, Neptune.
Well, it's interesting, and I wanted it would take more time, but I wanted to share that if Megna's trying to counsel me on what the Neptune, Saturn, Mars would be doing. Uh, I know whole house has put it in my first house, but it's actually, Coke, it's in my 12th house. So on the one hand, it's closure time. And in the same hand, I'm 73 years old. I need to be looking at that. And on the other hand, it's in Aries. It's like, oh, new time for, yeah, the next 80-year cycle. I mean, what am I going to start? How long am I going to live? Well, I'm doing that. I'm doing that with piano right now. It's like, yeah, 5 more years. Give me 5 more years, and I'll be really competent. So there is that difficulty of saying I need to be looking at closure and opening up at the same time. But balance both sides of that, and dance on that beam, so to speak. Because I could fall over at any one point and just die. And I don't dwell on that, but I work in neurology where I see tons of younger people that are far more ill than, with brain damage than I am, due to high blood pressure and drug use and lots of other things, but also just due to chance. So yeah, that's
Well, none of us are guaranteed tomorrow,
right.
I've had friends, there's been quite a bit of loss with the energetic degree of Neptune with people I know and love.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Not to be completely depressing, but on that Scorpio side, I'm like, can we punch my card? Like, I'm ready for the next one. Not to be completely depressing, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I just would like to say that your delusion proves that the whole sign house system works.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, you know, next time Chris is hiring, I'll be happy to give you a good resume to work
I'm
with him.
just saying, you just proved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, whole sign houses have been being used for thousands and thousands of years in India also. And we don't have to compete. We can all get along. Isn't that?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Kumbaya, right?
yes.
Definitely.
I
All
mean,
right.
it is
Shall we
Neptune.
wrap it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Was
Thank you
a
so much.
good chat.
What? You're frozen.
It was a good chat.
It was. It
Try
really
that
was.
again.
I said it was a
She said it was a good chat.
Okay.
it was
There you go. Now you're back. Thank you.
Oh,
I'll see you
yes.
all in the next 8 weekends.
Yep.
Bye, everyone. Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye.
There we go. Bye.